Okay, good. I caught you before May 5th. Very important. And if you happen to be watching this after May 5th, don't worry. Guarantee you're still going to get value in this video. But what happens on that date? Well, if you didn't know, something that just happens 4 times a year. This is when DoorDash reports their Q1 2022 earnings. So it's an earnings call. They go over their metrics, of course, their financials, but they also give us insights into 3 different subcategories: the merchant, the restaurant side of the business, the consumer, the end user side of the business, and yes, number 3, the third piece of this business model, it's you, the Dasher. Now, here's something in this video that I haven't done before. I'm going to make this really easy for you. We're going to go over the most important points of previous earnings calls and to try to piece together an idea of what to expect on this most recent earnings call. And ultimately, there's always kind of a in between the lines warning that I want you to pay attention to. So this is going to save you a ton of time because literally this is like over a year's worth of reporting, multiple quarterly reports, specifically the most important pieces of Dasher insights straight from the company themselves. So check this out. Starting from Q4 of 2020, I'm going to go through again the most important things you need to be aware of, and then kind of summarizing where I think this is going into Q1 2022 on that May 5th call here. So 2020 Q4, they stated there's 1 million Dashers. Pay attention to that number. 1 million Dashers. And DoorDash increased the earnings per hour by 20% compared to 2019. So that sounds pretty good, like 20% increase from, year over year. 20% increase on those earnings per hour. And in fact, if you've been driving that long, would you agree with that? Now, nextly, Q1 of 2021 last year. So remember that Dasher number. This is, again, for the quarter specifically. Now, DoorDash says 2 million dashed. So doubling that population of Dashers in a specific quarter. And this time, additionally, Dasher earnings per active hour also increased, not only quarter over quarter. So that's comparing this quarter to last quarter, but year over year. So this quarter Q1 versus the Q1 of last year. Interestingly, in Q1 of 2021, they did say when it comes to Dashers that stimulus checks most likely resulted in less Dasher hours. And we'll see there's kind of a volatility with this whole gig economy. Specifically talking about Dashers here, of course, is it's kind of like, well, I only need to dash when I need to dash, when I'm trying to make some extra money, right? So if we get an influx of money from stim checks, kind of makes sense there, but that was interesting. And then the third point, Q1 2021, that only 6% of Dashers preferred rideshare to dashing. That's based on a September 2020 survey. That's really interesting. As someone I've done rideshare, I've done food delivery, I would kind of agree with that. I think arguably the pay is pretty similar. It's probably even better on food delivery based on the dollars to mile ratio. And I prefer food delivery over rideshare. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that? Moving on, Q2 of 2021, what was the Dasher number, right? We started with 1 million Dashers in the quarter. Now it was 2 million Dashers in a given quarter. Now 3 million Dashers in Q2 of 2021, but they state more new Dashers than any previous quarter. Now, let me ask you this. Think about this. When do you typically drive or work, just generally in the gig? Like, when do you work? What days? Is it like usually Mondays for me, Wednesdays, maybe weekends? Is it kind of the same on a schedule, or does it vary? Listen to this, really interesting. So DoorDash stated Q2 of 21, among Dashers that dash on a Monday, just over half dashed the next Monday, and less than 20% dashed each of the next 4 Mondays. So basically, like these drivers that were surveyed on a Monday that basically only half of them dashed that next Monday, and then a significant amounts the next 4 Mondays were still dashing. So DoorDash said that pattern indicates it's pretty spontaneous. And I asked you that DoorDash's data says like, hey, I drive when I need to drive. You may be really busy. I think of my good friend Jess. She's a busy parent. She's got a lot going on. She doesn't have a ton of free time. So that makes sense that it's like, if I don't have a lot of time, or this is the time when I can make some extra, or if I need extra money, right? So let me know if you agree with that down below. We're into Q3 of 2021. Hey, if you're getting value in this video so far, definitely drop a like, comment your biggest standout or aha moment down below in the comments, and definitely subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. I'll welcome you to the team here. Appreciate that. So Q3 2021, still 3 million dashers in the quarter. So we're seeing that high level, the volume of dashers is staying constant. And then Q3 of 2021, dasher earnings increased per active hour 9% versus Q3 of 2020. So that's our year over year comparison, up 9% and 30% versus Q3 of 2019. So remember, in our Q4 2020 reports, earnings increased from 2019. And then at least one other time, earnings increased, and then earnings increased again in now Q3 of 2021. So this is statistically based on DoorDash. They're saying like, hey, active hour earnings are consistently increasing. And one of my kind of predictions for 2022 is we saw a ton of demand, pandemic-based demand with restaurant closures. Now being more back to normal, might we see a tapering, less consumer spending in Q3 later this year and Q4 ultimately in 2022? That's kind of my predictions of trajectory. But based on DoorDash's data, earnings apparently are increasing significantly and consistently. Again, let me know if you agree with that. So now our most recent quarter, Q4 of 2021, now we see 6 million dashers. Now this was in the entire year versus the quarter, but 6 million dashers, 11 billion in revenue. And I made a pretty interesting point, I think, in this most recent letter to investors. Check out the card linked above if you want to see that. Still a consistent amount for the quarter though, 3 million. Now, one thing I liked in this Q4, the most recent reporting, is kind of some, I guess, self-awareness from DoorDash, some common sense that was, I think, at least good to see in writing. So they state, hey, look, we have to win dashers time. And they say if our opportunities are not sufficient, people will they'll work elsewhere. They'll use different gig apps or even a different niche, or they simply just won't do it. And that was kind of refreshing because it's like, yes, that is 100% correct. And when I tell you my job here is to help you make money in different side hustles, that's exactly what I'll tell you. You have no allegiance to any app or niche. We here on the channel, we follow what works. We follow where the money's at. It has ebbed and flowed. It has changed. You'll see that here on the channel. It's changed based on hot apps and hot niches. So, like DoorDash said, if they're not attractive, why would you do it? And this is why, hopefully, you're subscribed here, because we try to uncover the best earnings opportunities. Because again, you just won't know if you're like just on one app. So that's interesting. And additionally, when it comes to stats, DoorDash says on average, dashers drive less than 4 active hours per week. Pay attention to the verbiage there. Active is when you're on an assignment. Just dash time in general is just basically when you're online, just online in general. But still, that's a good stat to see here, just 4 active hours. And that was consistent with previous quarters. I've done this stuff as a side hustle and a full-time hustle with the 9 to 5. And if you're working a standard job, and let's say you have a family, you got other stuff going on, you're not going to use all waking hours to also do a side hustle, unless, you're really grinding to pay down credit card bills, something like save up for a big purchase. So I get that, certainly. So 2022, May 5th, this most recent earnings call. What do I expect and what warnings should you be looking out for as a Dasher? My warning for 2022, and it's really just a years long thing that we're watching here, is that trajectory possibly downward of consumer spending, but not until Q3 and Q4 of this year. I think we'll see that Dasher earnings will remain consistent. I think we'll see, that 3 million Dashers per quarter. I think that's going to remain consistent, if not maybe decrease a little bit. But I feel like Dasher earnings aren't going to be reported as, earnings went up 9% quarter over quarter, 30% year over year. I believe Q1, we're going to start to see maybe a leveling off. If it does go up, maybe something less than 10%. And then just forward thinking into Q2, I think it's going to kind of be more of the same, kind of a leveling of Dasher earnings. And what you might really want to watch, in fact, we're going to be live streaming this Q1 earnings call on May 5th. So click the notification bell, subscribe to be notified of that live stream so you can watch it live. But consumer spending, maybe that consumer reporting on this letter to investors. If you're more into finance, you can actually look over the corporate tax filings. I'm not a financial analyst. That's why I don't talk to you about it here. But the consumer spending might be the first red flag to look for. If consumer spending is down like 10% this quarter, 15% in Q2, and maybe kind of leveling off, staying consistent in Q3 and Q4, that's going to signal possibly the lesser earnings for Dashers. Less consumer spending, less orders on the platform, and then the same amount of Dashers. So you don't have as many orders to pick from, theoretically. And then maybe into Q1 of 2023, some Dashers might fall off the platform as we see a tapering in Q3 and Q4 of this year. But if that happens, I would stay strong in Q1 of 2023 because there could be some opportunities there if some Dashers kind of knee-jerk and just kind of abandon the platform with less consumer spending. So I hope that makes sense. Drop a like if you appreciate that, but I'll put it simply, watching consumer spending, if it's staying the same or starting to decrease, and Dasher earnings. If DoorDash comments on Dasher earnings at all, and if that stays the same, because I don't anticipate it's going to jump, let's say 10, 15, 20% quarter over quarter. So those are the two things, the warnings, the red flags to look for a possible tapering in Q3 and Q4 of this year. So if you got value in this video, you can definitely show me by dropping a like on this. I really appreciate that. It does help the channel a lot. And you can also click or tap screen here for my newest video, as well as a video recommended for you. And I'll see you in the next one.